I love that AEW has been able to build this kind of an audience where we're a very important part of our sport. And again, for challenger brands in sports, you're always looking at the industry leader and trying to find ways to differentiate yourself. I think for AEW, there isn't another challenger league, if you look at all the sports, that has the kind of success and market share and sustainability and consistency that AEW has.
I'm Ndamukong Suh, and welcome to No Free Lunch, where we talk to experts and athletes about how the most successful people in sports manage their money and grow their wealth. Danny, what's up, man?
Man, I'm happy to be here. Excited for this episode. I don't know if you know this, but I lived in Jacksonville for a little bit in high school.
I did know this, boss.
Okay.
I don't remember if the only thing that you can pride yourself on is Swisher Sweets, boss.
Well, speaking of Jacksonville, we're talking to Tony Khan. His family owns the Jags.
Yeah.
But I think, we know that part. This is a football show to a degree. Mm-hmm. But I think what's probably going to be more interesting to you is that he's the owner, CEO, president of AEW. Yeah. And AEW is a wrestling company that is disrupting the wrestling entertainment space. Are you a WWE fan? Were you as a kid?
No question was a WWE fan. Stone Cold Steve Austin, all the above, The Rock.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in my dad's office watching WWE late night SmackDown, Monday night, let's go.
Yeah, that was it. Monday night was the key. That was very pivotal. For me, it was like John Cena was coming up. But yeah, I'm excited to learn how not only has he kind of pathed this new unique role from a strategy and analytics standpoint with the Jags, but then also how he's disrupting wrestling and entertainment with a company that started a little bit before the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I'm super curious to learn and understand everything that he's doing. Not only a little bit about the Jags, maybe I could get a job or something as president and, follow in the footsteps of Matt Ryan, but you never know. But let's talk about it right here on No Free Lunch. Tony, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on. It's really a pleasure to do this with you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I look forward to obviously connecting in person as we had previously planned. But ultimately, I want to jump right into it. And you have, as a family, had great accomplishments, not only in the soccer and I call it real football world, but also American football. But also, you're the owner and president of AEW and chief strategy officer for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I want to understand at an early age, growing up, what do you remember about first ever being in business?
In business, that's a great question. I don't really remember being in business as much as I remember growing up around sports. And now sports is my business. And I didn't see it that way. I was a fan and I liked reading Sports Illustrated and going to the Illinois football games and watching wrestling on TV, and now being involved in football and wrestling. It's a lot of fun.
In talking about wrestling, I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s from that perspective, and seeing WWE was in its hype kind of in that period of time. What were your early childhood stories in and around wrestling?
Well, I've been a wrestling fan since I was a small kid. I grew up watching wrestling. A lot of the wrestling I watched was on TBS and TNT. And we launched AEW, and I felt like that was something that was missing, bringing wrestling back to TBS and TNT, where I grew up watching it. So I grew up as a big fan of the sport. And really, as a young kid, the very first time I saw wrestling was on other shows, not wrestling itself, but like representation of wrestling. I watched G.I. Joe, and Sergeant Slaughter was one of the G.I. Joes. So I saw Sergeant Slaughter and became a fan of his. And I saw he was a wrestler, and I wanted to watch more wrestling. I also saw Hulk Hogan on the A-Team playing Hulk Hogan, the wrestler. And then I realized that's actually a wrestler, and wrestling's actually a show and a sport. So I started watching wrestling, and around the same time I started watching football. I grew up in Champaign, Illinois, and went to the Illini football games as a kid and have always really loved Illini football and Illini basketball growing up in Champaign.
In AEW, from that standpoint, what are you looking to differentiate in yourself as a company and ultimately a brand from all the other pre-existing and potentially other entities that may want to come into the space?
Well, it's a great question. AEW is where the best wrestle. We have the best roster of wrestlers, and they set themselves apart in the ring with their great wrestling, and the shows are really fun to watch. We're on every Wednesday night on TBS. The show's on every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday Night Dynamite is now the longest running primetime pro wrestling show ever on TBS or TNT. And we've had this amazing run, it's pretty incredible. I grew up watching wrestling on TBS and TNT, and it's amazing now. AEW, in some ways, it feels like we just started yesterday. We've had this run now over 6 years doing the show every Wednesday night, and it's become the longest running show. It's like you start out as a rookie and you become the veteran very quickly. And in this case with pro wrestling, Wednesday Night Dynamite has become a staple, and now we have Saturday Collision as well. Every Saturday we have a great wrestling show we do on TNT called AEW Saturday Collision. That's on 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. And we've started this year to simulcast the shows. We're also on HBO Max streaming, which has been bringing in a whole new audience, people that couldn't see the show on TBS or TNT because maybe they don't have cable, and maybe some people seeing it for the first time, or even bringing back fans that cut the cord over the years. So that's been a really great thing for us in 2025. And then in 2025, Sports Illustrated picked AEW as the best pro wrestling promotion in the world. That's a real honor. We didn't win the award in 2024, and I wanted us to all work really hard and make 2025 a great year. So we ended up winning the award in 2025, and that has been a great sign going into what I think is going to be a great 2026. So by putting on the best wrestling shows with the best wrestlers, I think we've established ourselves in the wrestling business.
And that makes total sense. And I'm curious to what from a nostalgic standpoint, allows you to create those pieces and win these awards. And would you go back and say that's from your first live wrestling events and matches that you've been able to fall in love with the sport and the industry?
Well, I started watching when I was really young, and I just soaked it up and watched more and more and more wrestling. And I'm sure for both of us, as we grew up as football fans, I grew up as a big football fan. And from what I understand, you're somebody that loves football very much. And I've always really enjoyed watching you play. And I started watching football and soaked it up. And then I started wanting to watch not only the college football in my town, but also watch NFL, and then started watching all the games of all the teams and following the statistics of the sport and collecting football cards and things like that. And for me with wrestling, I soaked it up and just became a huge fan of it, watching different wrestling. I learned a lot about it, the history of the sport, the different territories around the country where wrestling was promoted, and the different countries where wrestling has grown, including Mexico and Japan. And AEW has great partnerships with the wrestling leagues in Mexico and in Japan. Watching wrestling my whole life and seeing an opportunity to launch a challenger wrestling promotion, it's something that made great sense to me. And I saw an opportunity and we seized on it with AEW. Now we've been running the business for over 7 years, and the TV show Wednesday Night Dynamite, our original flagship show, dates back, as I was saying, over 6 years, with over 330 episodes now. And we've also had now over 130 episodes of Saturday Night Collision. So we built a great thing very quickly. And it still feels every week going out there, because wrestling is the only sport with no off season. We do this 52 weeks a year with no break. And we put on new wrestling shows every week with no off season. It's very different than other sports where there's a cadence to the season and the off season. We just keep going every week, and I really enjoy it.
I want to understand how you guys were able to position the business, especially in such a tough time, but still thrive during COVID.
Thank you. That's a great question, sir. I really thought it was the perfect time in 2019 to launch AEW for a variety of reasons. There were a number of top international pro wrestlers whose contracts would expire at the start of 2019. And it made it a perfect time to launch a promotion. Also, the TV rights fees were starting to escalate for wrestling, where I believed you could base a business model for the first time, not only around pay-per-views and live events, but also around television rights fees. So in April of 2018, a light bulb went off in my head when I saw my friend, who at the time was the president of TBS and TNT. And TBS and TNT have this great history of putting on wrestling. A lot of your listeners may have watched wrestling on TBS and TNT over the years. And there was a period of almost 20 years where there was no wrestling on TNT. And it actually went over 20 years with no wrestling on TBS, which is crazy because the tradition of wrestling on TBS goes back to 1971. And it's one of those channels, TBS and TNT, they are two channels that have this history and connection. Just like there were these brief periods, I think from 1994 to 1998, there was no football on CBS. And then NBC was out of football from then until the start of Sunday Night Football. So when these networks got football back, it fit like a glove. The NBA is back on NBC. That seems like a good fit historically with a brand. Wrestling on TBS and TNT made sense. And I wanted to start a new wrestling company, a new promotion called AEW, All Elite Wrestling, where the best wrestle. So we launched in 2019. We had the first AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite in October of 2019. And then months into the promotion, we were hit with COVID for a live touring company that puts on live shows around the country every week. This was a huge challenge. So first of all, I had to cancel a live event that we had scheduled in New York. And all of the live events in 2020 for the foreseeable future, we went down to Jacksonville and we started putting on the shows in Jacksonville. And we ran all the shows out of the amphitheater outside our stadium for over a year. And it was a hugely successful period for us. A lot of fans remember it fondly as some of the best times of AEW, and we made the most of it. And it was a challenging time. I came up with some ideas, for example, with no fans in the stands at first. I put all the wrestlers that weren't working on any given night and all the local wrestlers and a lot of out of work independent wrestlers, I brought them in to be the ringside fans because we couldn't sell tickets at that point. So there were strict rules. So I brought in more wrestlers to be the fans. And I saw our competition just was wrestling in completely empty buildings. And to be honest, I got this idea from watching Jimmy Fallon because I saw the different talk shows the first week of COVID. And I was like, well, what are they doing? And Stephen Colbert does a great show, but his show had no audience. And it felt very different than what late night comedy typically was. And then I watched The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. He had like the staff in the room when he was telling the jokes and doing the monologue. And it was maybe like 10 people, but it sounded like a small comedy club. And there was at least reactions to the jokes and laughter. And then I realized, having a few people, a small group is so much better than nobody for stand-up comedy. And I think it would be that way for wrestling. So we were the first wrestling company to have people around ringside. The very first week I put the wrestlers around the ring and we kept doing that. And then a few months later, we're doing the shows outdoors and we started to learn more. You're doing, even in COVID times, doing things outdoors was much safer and better. It was okay. I'll start bringing fans back outdoors, just like drive-in movie theaters. If you can do drive-in movie theaters where a family can sit in a car, or friends can sit in a car together and watch a movie outside, and they're all in their individual cars and everyone thinks that's okay, why can't I make my amphitheater like a drive-in movie theater for wrestling? And I sell this section of seats to one group and I sell this section to one family. And then you have some friends in this section and everybody's in their own seating section, but we bring the fans back. It worked out great. Then a couple months later, 2020 NFL, week 1 of the NFL season, who were the only teams that had fans in the stands week 1, 2020? The Jags and the Chiefs. And we used the exact same setup that we had in Daly's Place. We sold it like a chessboard or a checkerboard. It was 25% capacity. And by the end of the year, that's what we did for the Super Bowl that season in Tampa. The Super Bowl had the same setup, except instead of just checkerboard seating, the NFL brilliantly put in cardboard cutouts, and not just all the same. They looked like a full stadium because there were different cutouts of different people throughout the stadium. And that brought fans back to wrestling and to football. And when we went back on the road in 2021 for AEW, there was such a great energy. The fans were so excited to see it again. And Daly's Place, the amphitheater in Jacksonville, became synonymous with AEW and a time in AEW that now the fans look back at really fondly. Also, it really helped AEW catch up. We came out much hotter than we went in. We went in really hot, and people were saying, man, AEW Revolution in early 2020, February 29th, 2020, Leap Day, people said that was a great show. Going into March 2020, you guys are hot. That's like one of the best pay-per-views in recent memory. The original Revolution was so good. People said, what a terrible time for this to happen with no fans. What are you going to do? And we managed to make it into a really positive situation, and we came out better for it.
Let's talk about the plan for AEW in the future and in that growth trajectory. What does that particularly look like in your eyes right now?
Well, I think there's a huge opportunity for AEW in the future. We're the challenger wrestling promotion, and we've built something where we have a big audience of our own. As far as being the challenger league in a sport, we have the biggest audience of any challenger league. AEW is the biggest sports startup since the AFL, which goes really far back in football history, pre-merger. And that's the last time the challenger brand in a sport had the market share of AEW. It's really exciting. And as somebody who loves wrestling, I love that AEW has been able to build this kind of an audience where we're a very important part of our sport. And again, for challenger brands in sports, you're always looking at the industry leader and trying to find ways to differentiate yourself. And I think for AEW, there isn't another challenger league, if you look at all the sports, that has the kind of success and market share and sustainability and consistency that AEW has. We're coming off a year where AEW was Sports Illustrated's Pro Wrestling Promotion of the Year and received the awards for the best wrestling show of the year from Sports Illustrated, ESPN, New York Post, Yahoo, all these great publications recognizing the quality of AEW. And for us being the challenger brand, that really speaks, I believe, to the quality of AEW and the audience that we built.
You brought up NFL football and American football from that perspective, and you being the chief football strategy officer for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I got a question for you. If you had an example of a real player that said, I really want to advocate for them in this free agency moment, but everybody was against you, what was some of those pieces that you saw why you see them going to be flourish in the NFL on a positive standpoint?
Well, I don't know about saying necessarily everybody being against you. I think that, everybody has opinions in football. And I think everybody wants to win. And you get a team of people together and you might have different ideas or thoughts about what gives you the best chance to win. And that's okay. I always say it's all opinions. They're all valid. And everybody in the room in the sport is entitled to have those opinions. And it's just about using the information and everybody working together to try to make what the group feels is the best decision. And in this case, there's been a number of times over the years where with certain players where I think I had good thoughts, and other times where, my opinion on a player might not have been as good as somebody who banged the table for a different player. There are really specific examples over the years. I think that it can sometimes be a little mean-spirited to go back and say, like, I told you so, but there's definitely clear-cut examples where I think I would point to certain players that have had incredible careers where I thought that might have been the way to go. And I don't think it serves, even though it's fun to look back at, especially if you're not me and and it's fun to talk and gossip about these things. But I do think, being respectful to people that have played here and not saying I think that this person would have been better. I don't want to do that, but I do think there are a number of times over the years where, we've had a pick or a chance to draft somebody, and I really would have liked to have drafted them, and then they've gone on to have some really great careers. But then there's been other times where I think I've had input and they did listen to it, and we did do that. And I enjoy that part of the process too. I'm going into my 15th season in the NFL. And what's incredible is our paths, you and I, could have crossed. And you probably haven't ever thought of this, or this may not have occurred to you. But, my father in 2010, and it all has worked out fantastic for everybody. But, my father in 2010 put in the bid that was accepted to buy 60% of the St. Louis Rams. And my father then had this agreement with Chip Rosenblum, who owned 60% at the time. And the person who owned 40% at the time was Mr. Stan Kroenke. And Stan, with his 40%, had the matching rights. So he exercised those rights, which he had every right to do. And that worked out fantastic for him. And he's grown the Rams into an amazing franchise. You were in the NFL draft that year, and the Rams had the number one pick, and it was a very interesting time. So we never ended up, either of us, you or I, doing that with the Rams at that point. But both of us had a dalliance with the Rams in 2010, you and I. Like Chip's passing in the night. So I've always thought that was interesting. And that goes back now 16 years, sir.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. And especially, I definitely didn't know that. And you learn something new every single day. But yeah, I think you could say in some respects, there was some misinformation in decisions that were made of who got to go number one in that 2010 draft versus who didn't get to go number one in that 2010 draft, that I'll never forget, to say the least.
It was a crazy time, and things worked out very well for you, and you've had this amazing career, and now you're on to your incredible career here as well in the media. But I would be remiss if I didn't look back at a time in football when we weren't that far apart, you and I.
With being in the position of setting the strategy, especially for the Jacksonville Jaguars, how do you look at evaluating talent? And is it just stat sheets, or are you looking at it from a combine performance? Because you see a lot of people in the media likes to shift the focus of saying, oh, they did an amazing job in these drills, why their draft stock went up, versus what are the true intricacies behind the closed doors that decision makers are saying, I know what they can do from an athletic perspective, but these are the intangible things that I want to have them be a part of this organization. And that's why we're going to pick them at this level.
Well, I think a number of factors contribute. The most important thing to me is the games, the college games, and what happens in those games, which it's not just the stat sheets, it's the video, and all of it comes from the video. All these things are plays that happened in the games. There's different ways to interpret them and what came from them. But to me, what happened in the games is the most important thing. And you can look at it a number of ways: on paper, with the video tracking stats, or just watching the video. And they should all lead you to similar conclusions. not always the exact same thing, but they are all different ways to document what happened in the games. Then there's athletic performance off the field, like you said, the combine, the pro days, a number of things that can contribute to a player rising or falling in the draft. And these are all in the eye of the beholder. And I think that there are different ways that people calculate their grades for the draft. I like to study, and it's a number of things to me. The combine is part of the picture. The pro days are part of the picture. There's good players that don't go to the combine. And the pro days also can reflect people who don't do certain drills at the combine. But to me, the most important part of the evaluation, and by the way, they're talking to people. These are human beings. Trying to find a fit, I think, is very important. A fit for the coach and the organization and with the players on the team. We have a great group of people. I really enjoy working with this group, and we haven't been together that long, with James Gladstone and Tony Baselli and our fantastic coach, Liam Cohen. And I really like talking with them and working with them. They have really nuanced opinions. James is a young general manager who's brought great insight and has worked with data a lot. And he's young enough to be part of an NFL where data has been involved this whole time. You know, it was becoming more a part of the sport when you and I first got into the league in very different parts of the league and very different roles, with you being one of the game's greatest players and somebody who's left a lasting legacy on the sport that will always be remembered. And I try to contribute ideas and stats from the office. And so we have very different parts that we play in the sport, but with the lasting legacy that you've put into the business and the game, I do think that there's all different ways that you can form these opinions. I've certainly learned a lot over the years, although a lot of the ideas I had in the early years, I think when I look back, they were good ideas, and they're still valid and good thoughts to this day. If I was going to name one player that I think would have been really great, not to belabor it, but like going back many, many years, I think to look at an example of a player that never should have fallen as far as they did, I think Darius Slay in 2013 going into the second round was crazy to me. We had the first pick of the second round. So I would say that would be one example of banging the table for a player. But then there's been plenty of other times where somebody else had a better idea than I did. And you've been around a long time. I think we've seen there's a number of ways players' stock can rise and fall. You dominated the sport in college, and you also tested well. But I think dominating the sport in college long before you ever stepped out for the combine or a pro day or any kind of testing like that was really what gave you this lasting college football legacy. You were just inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame. Is that right?
I was. So it was a great honor for sure, and look forward to celebrating with teammates and friends and family in Las Vegas in December. And I'll be sure to let Darius Slay know that, because he actually called me earlier today and I owe him a call back. So I will tell him that you spoke very highly of him, and he shouldn't have fell into the second round,
or at least
as he did. But I was happy because he came to Detroit.
First pick of the second round.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm curious, as I've always looked at your organization, especially outside looking in, you guys are by no means penny wise, pound foolish. And I'm curious at what point in time, is there any amount of a situation or one specific thing that you guys will never not save money on, and no matter what the spreadsheet says, you guys are going to pile in, and this is a sole core belief of you guys and the success of the organization?
I think it's a great team. You know, my father led an amazing process that helped us get to this point in the turnaround. I think he picked the right head coach, he picked the right general manager, and he picked the right person to come in and be an organizational leader. The only Hall of Famer ever at the Jaguars is Tony Baselli. And Tony Baselli is a leader in the community and a leader in the Jaguars building, and he was a perfect person to join our young head coach and our young general manager. And we believe in all three of these guys. And together as a group, Liam Cohen, James Gladstone, Tony Baselli, they've had tremendous success in their first year. And I think my father led a fantastic process. He has been willing to commit money to build a great organization. We just extended both of the coordinators on offense and defense, which is tremendous. I think we have great coordinators as a group with offense, defense, and special teams. Our offensive and defensive coordinators were both candidates for head coaching jobs. So for both of them to return and want to be here and continue and build with the Jaguars for another year, we're all very excited about it. And I think the team is in the best place it's ever been in my time here. I can't speak to before, but this is my 15th season, and I've never felt better than I do right now about the Jaguars.
I remember watching you guys, I believe it was like week 4 in London at not Tottenham, but it would have been Wembley, as you guys have a relationship there. And the struggles that I saw happen against the Rams, but the transformation of Liam Cohen's offense and the defense and guys buying in, that could have been a major turning point for you guys in a negative way, but it was really, I think, a positive turning point for you guys because you guys like shot out of a rocket ship weeks 5, 6, 7, and onward into the playoffs, and obviously came up short because the goal is ultimately to always get to the Super Bowl. And I'm curious, like, where does your guys' organization feel like you need to invest in the draft at right now? And we know it's super early, you're still studying and looking at these things, but obviously you're trending and you have a great core. So what are you going to look to draft and hope for you guys being there? Obviously, barring injuries and all those different particular pieces that we all have to, every team has to deal with for the Super Bowl next year.
We're in a great position. I think we can look across numerous positions. One thing that's great about being in our spot in the draft is we don't need to worry at all about the quarterback for the starting quarterback position. I really feel very good about that. And when you look at draft capital, the most draft capital historically has gotten tied up in teams searching for their starting quarterback. We don't need to search for that. We have a tremendous young starting quarterback that we've invested in, the whole organization believes in, is committed to, which is a testament to him, his work ethic, and the great group of people around him supporting him, the team and the coaches and the fans. And I think that with our draft position, we're not drafting at the top. We've had a good season. We've made the playoffs. We need to see what happens and get the best player for us in this position. And now having a good core and having the position established where people spend the most draft capital, starting quarterback. Now I think we're in a great position where we can go out and take the best player available and build our team, because we will come back with a great core. We know we're going to have that. There'll be opportunities in free agency with our own players that are here and also to bring in new players. But now being in this position in the draft, which is a good position to be in, not at the top of the draft, it gives us an opportunity to continue to build the team. And we've accumulated draft picks and we'll continue to accumulate draft picks.
And I'm curious, even from a business perspective, all the hard work that you guys have put in and around Jacksonville and what you're looking to do in the future, how is that process and what does that investment look like from a monetary perspective to spin up not only the team, getting the team back on its feet, but also the community and the culture, because it is a live event that you want your fans to enjoy every bit of that. And I believe they do with a big old pool in the stadium as well.
Well, it's a great thought. My father's done a fantastic job working with the city of Jacksonville to build the stadium of the future. So there's been a huge commitment to the stadium, and also my father's making huge investments in the infrastructure in downtown Jacksonville. We're building a Four Seasons hotel in downtown Jacksonville, which is going to be the city's best hotel. And my father also owns the Four Seasons in Toronto, so has learned a lot about putting together the best hotel team and the best hotel in the world. And coming now to Jacksonville with the Four Seasons around what will be the stadium of the future. It's a great commitment from my father and from the city of Jacksonville and the fans and the taxpayers working together. My father's put in hundreds of millions of dollars working with the city. The city's made a huge commitment, and together they're going to build something very, very special. And I think it's very fitting that we're seeing this great progress and this great core coming together with the Jaguars players and this staff that's gelled together so well. And the timing is so perfect to have an exciting young team and exciting young staff for the fans to support as we're building the stadium of the future.
If you had a crystal ball, what would you envision happens next year when all those things come to fruition and the course of ultimately your vision of the sports side of things and coming together based on your previous work that you guys have put in this last year to where you're at right now? And as you mentioned, all the draft capital that you guys do have.
A lot of work goes into the draft process. We have a really hard working group of scouts and coaches, and it starts at the top with Liam Cohen, James Gladstone, Tony Baselli. We are going to maximize the resources. I really believe in this group. Never before have we had a smarter, more connected group of people. We've had a lot of smart people, and I really like a lot of the people that have been here, and I have a lot of respect for different executives and coaches that have worked here throughout the years. Being here 15 years, I've met a lot of great people, and I've worked with a lot of great people at the Jaguars. And as a group coming together, there's a young, dynamic, aligned energy about what we have right now. And it feels like the fans can see it. It feels like the team is bought into it. And I think we'll make the best decisions we can as a group. I feel really confident about that. And in utilizing the draft picks we've accumulated and continuing to preserve draft picks for the future.
Well, Tony, this has been an amazing conversation and greatly appreciate your busy schedule and everything that you've got going on at this particular time. But I'd be remiss to not ask you my last and favorite question of all. What is the biggest price that you've paid for a breakthrough to date?
I have had some experiences in wrestling where we've done some great things and built some great things up. And then just like in any sport, you can build things up and then years later, it all changes. Somebody leaves the organization, and that doesn't take away the memories or the things that you built. In English football, promotion and relegation, I think, is the best example of this. And there's nothing that hurts more than being relegated, and there's nothing that feels better than the promotion. And I've experienced those highs and lows. And right now, similar to the things we were talking about in the NFL, which I like to focus on when I talk to you because of your incredible experience there and anything I can learn or insights that you have about the sport of NFL football or college football. I was at the National College Football Championship playoff, and I saw you for the induction, and I knew we were doing the interview together. So I wanted to be sure to mention that because I thought that was very cool that you'll be going into the College Football Hall of Fame. And I've talked with you a good amount about NFL. We haven't talked a lot about Premier League. I think it's taken us a long time to get to the place that Fulham Football Club is at now. Currently, as we do this interview, we sit 7th in the Premier League with everything to play for and great opportunities. And I look back, and it's been a long, challenging road to get here of ups and very painful downs. And there are players, there are staff that have been here for a long time and seen a lot of it. There are players that have left and come back that have been here through promotion and or relegation and have come back to see things through. We have a great group of people at Fulham. I don't know if I would imagine that of your listener base, there may be more NFL than Premier League, but I would say that probably the best examples here for this is a great time to use my experiences at Fulham and talk about those. I'm very proud of the place we are right now, but it's taken a lot of ups and downs to get to this place where we've had what I believe has been a tremendous run. And I'm really enjoy working with the coach that is at Fulham right now, Marco Silva. And in the Premier League, being together and having a coach at a club for 5 years is a really long run. 5 years in the Premier League is like the equivalent of the kind of run that Andy's at in Kansas City. That kind of a long run, it doesn't happen as much. And this makes him one of the longest tenured managers in English football now, our great coach, Marco Silva. And he's done great things, and I really enjoy working with him. And I think Fulham has built a great team with Marco and the great staff and players that we have in place. And there have been some ups and really painful downs along the way, and it's all part of the journey. With the gift of hindsight, I've learned a lot from it. And I think right now the future is very bright for Fulham.
I think you guys are on a great trajectory with Fulham, and I can't go without saying I'm a Gooner. So I hope you guys get to second, but not first.
That's very good. Well, your team's having a fantastic season, and they're doing some great things. And a manager who's been in place a similar length of time and has also become one of the longest tenured managers is Arteta. And he's had a fantastic run there, and I have a lot of great things to say about them. And obviously, I know the Kroenke family very well. We were talking about the Rams. Also, they do a great job with Arsenal, and they've done a great job. And there's great things happening for Arsenal right now as well.
Well, Tony, man, this has been amazing. I appreciate your time in joining No Free Lunch, and look forward to connecting sometime soon, whether it's down in Jacksonville or wherever we catch each other in the world, whether it's in Europe and UK or wherever.
Can I get you in the ring? We got to get you wrestling, Mr. Suh.
Get me in the ring. I'm a little too old to be wrestling. I'll wrestle with my kids, and that's about it.
Oh, you're not. So you're in a great position to be wrestling. You look fantastic. You look like you could step through the ropes and lock up a wrestling match right now, sir.
No, I still work out, but wrestling is I think The Rock is the best example of transitioning from football to wrestling and then to acting. I think I'm going to skip the wrestling and go straight to acting.
And you're always welcome to come visit us at the Jags or at Fulham or at AEW.
The information provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified financial and or legal professionals before making any legal or financial decisions or investments. Man, what a great conversation with Tony Khan. I think my biggest takeaway is the creativity that he did with AEW in 2019 from the standpoint of having your own be the fans, but also be the talent. And obviously he mentioned the NFL being creative in and around the Super Bowl, which was huge because having won that Super Bowl, it felt like was a home crowd and it was a full stadium. Complete, great idea and focus and execution at the end of the day. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe to No Free Lunch on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.